And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm in a place that usually brings me much joy, which is the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. But under these circumstances, it's less than ideal. So I have no power in my apartment. So I've been scrambling through all of Metro West to find a place with reception and or Wi-Fi, which leads me to Marlborough, Massachusetts, in which I am now recording from my car. So I've been better. How are you?
You've been better. I can't complain, I guess, compared to you, unfortunately, at this moment. It's funny. Last week, Andrew Raycroft recorded in his car by choice. By choice. But today, you're in your car. So this is why people should watch on the YouTube channel as well, because as you can see in the background, it's raining, it's car, just everything's just going wrong in this moment, unfortunately, for you. So, yes. But we can hear you, and you're here, and you're present, so that's all that really matters to the people and to me. And so you're persevering through it. You're showing this is like Patrice Bergeron in the 2013 Cup final. This is like your groin injury and your collapsed lung. You got everything going on right now. So we thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna grit through it. Don't worry, I'll be fine.
Yeah, grit through. Hockey podcasters also can play through injuries too. Anyways, I know things are not too great right now for you. Anyways, we'll start from this point because we'll dive right into Bruins stuff. We're not going to spend time talking about Brady when we don't really have to, and every other show in the city is talking about him. So instead, we will actually stick to what our title is, and that's Bruins. Who is the starting goalie? Now, I know this is going to be a question that we're going to keep hearing for a while. We're not going to talk about Rask at all, actually. Instead, it's Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman. And I feel like, Hags wrote a column about this, I believe, on either Saturday or Sunday, in which he said that Swayman should be the starter. Going in, we kind of figured Ullmark would get the most of the starts during the year. Or not most, but majority of the starts during the year. But I'm just going to throw some numbers at you. I mean, they both have played about 90 minutes of preseason action, which is not much. Let me preface all this by saying it's the preseason. It's not a ton of time, but off of what we've seen, Ullmark 6 goals against on 32 shots, which is an .813 save percentage. Swayman 3 goals against on 37 shots, .919 save percentage. I think everyone pretty much agrees Swayman's looked a lot better. Do you see the preseason being the determining factor for why Swayman would start the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely, helps Swayman in terms of making a case for himself as to why he should be the opening night starter. Again, if you look at just the preseason performances, I don't know how you can make the argument that Swayman has not been the better goalie, and not just the, maybe the Ullmark, that OT blunder doesn't help his cause, right? The optics of that are pretty bad. But even beyond just that, I mean, you look at just the way that Swayman's played, how good he's been, moving laterally, had some rebound issues in that first, outing against the Capitals, but then kind of fixed that. But Ullmark's kind of been a little bit shaky in that regard. He's had a few rebounds that have, gone out to the high slot, even like a lot of dangerous loose pucks that you need to clear. So you look at just the overall body of work, and right now, I'd say Swayman has the edge just in terms of how they play. Now, will Swayman leapfrog him? I think you have to see how both Swayman and Ullmark end this preseason. If Swayman has a 39 save shutout in this game that will have already gone by the time this podcast drops. But let's say he has a 39 save shutout, then Ullmark follows it up on Wednesday with another 850 save percentage game. Situation gets kind of tough, right? But I think if both of them play around the same level, I think for Cassidy going into the preseason, he was talking about how it's to be expected for a guy in Ullmark to start slow, new system, new teammates, new defensemen, have to learn communication, which did not work in his favor in overtime a few days ago. So, and also I think you'd have to look at just the optics of, a veteran guy, a guy you dropped $20 million on to get beat out for the starting job by a rookie. Like, again, who knows? Swayman could be very special. He could be the guy who wins the Calder and makes a run this year, but in terms of the optic, it's almost like, an opening day starter in baseball, right? Like, do you go with the proven veteran whose ego you don't want to really hurt, or do you go with maybe the more talented younger player? It's like, maybe it's a safe option just to go with the veteran, because at the end of the day, people don't really care who's the opening night starter. What matters is you get to the postseason, you find out over the span of 82 games who's your best starter at that point in time. And that remains to be seen. But if you ask me right now who gets the opening nod, I'll probably say Ullmark, even though right now the body of work sure seems to favor Swayman.
Yeah, and that's the tough part with Swayman is he looks so good in the net. I mean, the way, as you said, he moves laterally so well. His whole career he stood on his head. In Maine, that was his whole time there, was just standing on his head. I mean, you knew it. I knew it from covering the end of his career when he would play UMass. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I mean, I remember last year his first game against Philadelphia. Was it 40 shots? It was close to it. And I mean, he's always standing on his head. And I wonder how much that factors into the decision, because Ullmark is, from what we've seen, I mean, obviously in Buffalo, he was really good in a really bad system and everything. And again, yeah, that'll take time to adjust to here. But I just wonder if maybe it's hard to make this declaration now, but I'm just wondering if maybe they should have went for a cheaper, older free agent goalie, more on the lines of Halak, to kind of put behind Swayman in a sense. But then again, it's like, well, do you want to trust Swayman? I mean, in some ways, this is a good situation. The only downside is Ullmark's making $5 million a year.
Yeah, no, I think it's the Bruins by signing on Ullmark. I think they more or less wanted to cover all their bases. I think regardless of, even if, let's say, Ullmark has a stinker in his last preseason game, I still think the Bruins are hopeful that you look at his numbers, production, how he fared in Buffalo. I still think that they signed him to that contract, expecting him to be a number one goalie down the road once he gets caught up and up to speed. And I think it also goes in line with what they're thinking, not only in terms of having a safeguard in case Swayman hits some bumps in the road, which is to be expected for a young goalie. I mean, look at just the situation in Philadelphia last year. Not to say it's going to be the same thing that happens between Swayman and what happened with Hart last year, but yeah, I made sure to correct that one there. But in terms of signing down Ullmark, it goes in line with that of having insurance for Swayman, but you also have to look at it from the fact that I think the way the Bruins kind of tackle the goaltending situation now, it's very much not it's a spot where it's not going to be a guy gets 70% of the reps. You have to have two guys who are comfortable even handing it 55 to 45% in terms of reps. And you have to maximize, what talent you have in net between those two players. So even if Swayman's great, is it the worst thing in the world to also have a legit number one with him? Because I think the Bruins is a good problem to have if you've got a guy in Ullmark who lives up to his potential as a number one and a potential Calder, a Calder Trophy, finalist in Swayman. If they're both playing well, it's a good problem to have. The only problem that gets difficult is one, if Tuukka Rask comes back, which we won't talk about. And two,
can't say it, not now.
Yeah, and two, when you get to the postseason, right? That's when the questions get tough. But in terms of how they're approaching this goaltending position, you can see the rationale of why, they're hopeful of what Swayman can bring them, along with the fact that they're excited to see what a guy like Ullmark could do, and that's why they handed him a contract like that.
And Swayman can't go anywhere. I mean, did you see the behind the bee footage that they got in Alaska? Ridiculous stuff. I mean, incredible. Imagine if you're on the behind the bee Bruins production team and you get to go to Alaska every year to go fishing in that area. You're not trading that guy from McDavid. No. Are you kidding me? That guy's staying here forever. So I do think that Swayman's been the better guy, obviously, through the preseason. But again, it's preseason. It's tough to judge that. But who knows? I mean, I could see a situation where Swayman is the hotter goalie in October, and then Ullmark kind of takes the reins in November, so to speak, and it's just back and forth. Where Ullmark kind of gets settled in, and he goes on a ridiculous run. So that's kind of more what I see. But I agree with you. I do think the opening night starter will be Ullmark. But as we've said all offseason, the opening night starter is not going to be the guy that gets 70% of the reps in net, or even 65. I think the max is like 60%, most likely, and it'll probably be a little bit more or less than that. Tough to say that, but you could say the goaltending controversy is back and better than ever. Speaking of football, Brady Sunday night. Geez, you were there. Lucky you, by the way, for getting to be there and cover it, and
very
that must
cool.
have been something being there.
Very cool. Very tired. Those 8 o'clock games add up quite a bit, but very, very cool to be there. Won't spend too much time talking football, but I think the best of both worlds happen. Oh, I guess a win would be the best case scenario for the Patriots. But you know what? Made it competitive. Mac Jones had a great game. Brady didn't go on a full revenge show. It wasn't a 4-touchdown game. Like,
No.
I think everyone left satisfied with what happened. Like, it wasn't a worst case scenario for anyone involved.
I think that was maybe one of the best case scenarios.
Yes.
One of. Obviously, Patriots winning would be best case scenario, but I think one of the best because again, you don't have. I mean, Mac Jones. You said Mac Jones looks great. Brady was incredibly nice after the game, and he met with Belichick for a while, and he met with Kraft. Everything kind of went well, and it could have not went well. But anyways, we move on. Jack Studnicka, same thing. Tom Brady, Jack Studnicka, same player. He has impressed through preseason. He's been one of the bright spots. I was looking at the advanced metrics today. Among all the metrics we love to use, expected goals for, expected goals for percentage, Corsi for percentage, the whole 9 yards. He's really good in all of those things. And he's been good. You've noticed him every game. And he's looked the part, so to speak, in the top 9 or on that second line. But we know that Charlie Coyle's going to be coming back. Is he playing Monday night? I forget. No, it's Wednesday,
right? Coyle, not until Wednesday. He'll be in the final preseason game.
It's Wednesday. So he's going to have one preseason game under his belt, and he's going to have 10 days before October 16th. It's tough. Obviously, I think Coyle's going to get the first crack at the second line, as he should. He's making the money for it. He's been around a while. You have Eric Halla on that second, on the third line. You have Patrice Bergeron on the first line, obviously. You're not going to put Studnicka on the fourth line. It seems like Studnicka is probably going to start the year in Providence, but kind of also when a guy goes down on one of those top 3 lines, he's going to step in. Would you say I'm correct in that assessment?
Yeah, I would say so. And it's kind of unfortunate because, as you said, even though I think Studnicka's, I think maybe Bruins fans hoping that he was going to go into the preseason and have like a hat trick, or he was going to play with Hall and Smith and put up a few, 2-point night, 3-point nights. Hasn't been there, but it's not as if, as you said, he's been noticeable whenever he's out there. I mean, he's impacting the game, active on the PK, doing the little things. And that's what I think Bruce Cassidy has mentioned multiple times, talking about his game, is that for a young player, sometimes the toughest adjustment is just adhering to kind of the fine details of the game and executing in them. And, Bruce Cassidy has always mentioned, like, we've got guys we pay that can consistently score, right? You do the little things that help them along the way, where it's killing a penalty, whether it's just getting the puck out of the zone. And Jack Studnicka's done those things. So it's not as if, he's in the doghouse with the Bruins. Like, I think they'd love to have him up in a spot. It's just where exactly does he go? And it's kind of unfortunate because Bruce Cassidy, more or less, as you said, kind of shut down potential of him being on the fourth line. But as much as you want to keep, Nosek in the middle, like, I don't know. If you're looking for a spot, and considering there really hasn't been a guy on the wing, especially on the fourth line, that's really stood up and, like, taken that job, like, we'll see how Frederick does on Monday, but he's underwhelmed. Like, is it crazy to think that Studnicka, if you, like, open the year with him as a fourth line guy, as this guy, he's not a traditional fourth line checking unit guy, but if he's like a Reilly Nash or something like that, does little things that help out your team. We saw how good he was in Providence on the PK as a shorthanded threat. Like, he has value there. It's just whether or not you want to open the season with him in that role. But, what else is the other scenario? Are you going to put him down in Providence, where he's probably already done everything he needs to do, and you're just finding, like, a spot on the third line? Like, best case scenario, that third line of DeBrusk, Howla, and Foligno stays together and continues to play well. Like, it's not like they're hoping for an opening to be there for Studnicka. Like, I think you have to find a spot for him, and fourth line might be the role. But right now, it doesn't seem like the Bruins are looking at that for him right now, which is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, and it's tough because, again, the top 2 lines are set. Like, those are set pretty much lines. The third line, you went out and signed Eric Halla and Nick Foligno, who, by the way, both look great in preseason. Yes. That pass from Eric Halla to Nick Foligno, that sauce was ridiculous. Spoke Z, I think, is still recovering from watching that take place, as he should be. That was a ridiculous pass. And you've trying to revitalize Jake DeBrusk on that left side, so you're not moving him. He's making too much money. So, again, there doesn't seem to be a place. But as you said, Cassidy's been kind of talking down on Trent Frederick to begin this training camp in the preseason, kind of saying he needs to have more tempo. And, it's a debate about Lazar and Wagner. And then obviously went out and signed Nosek. But I do wonder, though, as you said, if Frederick can kind of fit in somewhere. Or not Frederick, Studnicka can kind of fit in on that fourth line. Because, again, it changes the identity of the line. right? If you can roll out Nosek on the left wing, Studnicka down the middle, and a Lazar or Wagner on the right side, I don't hate that line. Like that,
Yeah.
that line does. And again, people forget Studnicka's a good two-way center. That's not a bad two-way center. So he can play those defensive draws. But again, you don't want to stymie his career. If you're going to project him to be a top 6 center, you don't want him playing bottom 6 minutes. But again, he's been in Providence for what, 2-3 years now? Like, it's been a while down there. It's not like he's doing anything new if he plays there this year. So
I mean, it's literally like when you play, like, be a pro in NHL. It's like, would you rather be like racking up points down in the AHL? Would you like be like the fourth line grinder who gets like PK minutes up at the NHL level? Like what's better for Studnicka's development at this point of his career? Like, piling. It's not like a Lysell over in Vancouver where like he's going to pile on points. That's great for his development at this stage. But if Studnicka's like got 40 points in 45 AHL games, is that going to help him out at this point? Or is it going to be like being a trusted penalty killer, potting a shorthanded goal, contributing that areas? Like, where are you getting the most out of him at this stage where he's 22 years old, right? So I think you have to find a role, even if it's not a conventional fourth line role, because even Bruce Cassidy talked about it, right? Like his idea of a fourth line isn't like a checking unit of just like a physical group. He said it's a puck possession line. So if Studnicka's holding on to the puck, if he's good in transition, if he's helping out on the PK, kind of fits into what they're looking for there, right?
yeah, and the other thing is, this goes back to my point that I've made a bunch of times, is you can increase his trade value if you really needed to trade him, like to really get something, because that's a chip. If you can build him back up, a few years ago that was your biggest trade chip. If you can then say, hey, this guy is really skilled in if you can put him, in a top 6 role, he's gonna offensively succeed. But now look at what he did for us this year. He killed penalties for us. He played bottom 6 minutes. He played against the other team's top lines at times and did a good job. So that's another thing that could potentially work in the Bruins' favor and work in Studnicka's favor. Because again, I think that there's a lot there. You just need to find a spot, and the fourth line, as you said, might be that spot. One center in the Bruins system, I feel bad for, is Johnny Beecher, who, according to Corey Pronman, is now out 4 weeks due to an upper body injury, and he was already out for a good amount of last year in Michigan. With an injury. Michigan will not be affected mostly by this because that roster is ridiculous. But it's unfortunate for Beecher, who this is important development time that he'll be missing. So hopefully he can kind of recover quick and get back out there as soon as possible. Other preseason stuff, little musings. Jake DeBrusk has been very good. Continues to kind of the revitalization continues to take place. We've talked at length about that, though. One guy who's impressed me, though, is Mike Reilly. Mike Riley's been really good. And I think we said this over the offseason. If you can, we obviously didn't see a full season of Mike Reilly last year. But in the time that he was with the Bruins, it was mostly very good. Give or take that Islanders series, which I guess can be a mulligan for everybody. But what do you see improving there? What do you see with a guy like Mike Reilly?
Yeah, I think over the span of a full season, as much as I think we talked about during the off season of not hesitation, like we don't be like Bruins don't sign Mike Reilly. It's just you worry about just whether it's maybe redundancy is the right word, or just the reliance on too much of a puck moving group on that left side as opposed to an Alexiak or something like that. Obviously that wasn't the case. A lot of those guys got signed even before free agency really started. But no, I think you look what Reilly brings. I mean, whether it's in transition, whether it's just tangible, even strength offense, which I want to say he led all defensemen last year, and I think it was maybe it was 5-on-5 assists. So like his value there is great in terms of how he impacted getting a Bruins team that traditionally in 5-on-5 has not been either in the middle of the pack or they've been kind of at the lower tier of NHL teams. So having a guy like Reilly helps out in that area. And it works out well with a guy like Brendan Kahlo, where, Kahlo has mentioned multiple times he likes playing with a puck-moving guy. And I think in that last game against the Rangers, you saw a little bit of how those guys, playing to their strengths can help out one another. Because you saw multiple times where Kahlo would get a guy as he crosses into crosses over the blue line, shuts down the scoring chance, separates player from the puck. Puck gets over to Mike Reilly, passed down the other end of the ice. And you got he had that 2-on-1 that he started with Marchand and Pastrnak, which came off of Carlos separating the puck from a guy down the other end of the ice. So it's not the most conventional deep pair, but based on the, what we saw in previous seasons with Carlo and Torrey Krug, like there's a way that group can kind of work if they both play to their strengths. And Reilly seems to be a guy that is meshing well with Carlo in that regard. So even beyond just the tangible offense, I think Reilly with Carlo can kind of get the best out of his game. And again, it's not like Carlo has to be like he's going to be like a Scott Niedermayer or something like that. He's going to be skating all over the place, right? But if he plays to his strengths, but also gets a little bit more comfortable handling the puck and having a guy like Reilly that can pass between them, I think it helps out all parties involved.
Yeah, and again, Carlo had a nice goal 2 games ago, I think. So it was and by the way, you've been back at the Garden for these games. I have not been. I, as people know, have a different job with NCAA.com. Go read there. They let me rank the top 10 every week, which is great but funny to me. So I get to have my own rankings.
UMass isn't dropping, even though that weekend they're not dropping.
UMass is still number 1. UMass is still the number 1 team in the nation. People forget.
Just a fluke.
Yeah, actually, it's weird. The games this weekend against Minnesota State got canceled. They didn't happen.
Oh, really?
Wild stuff. It's kind of like the 2015 national championship game. It just didn't happen.
Yeah, that was bizarre. I mean,
it was weird stuff.
Yeah.
It's weird. But no, for the people who want to know, UMass for me went down to 5. I thought I was knocking them down a ton. Nationally, UMass went down to 7th, which I agree with. But I was like, 2 losses, obviously Minnesota State, not great, but I'm not going to move them down past the top 5. And nationally, they went down to number 7. So whatever. And I have a different number 1 than the national. So hey, maybe I'm onto something. But you've been back at the Garden. What has the crowd been like? Has it been good? I know you said it's been pretty loud back there. It seems like people are happy to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are just excited to be back in the building, excited to scream when Crazy Train comes on, just excited to see in-person hockey. And again, we're still in the, there's still, mask mandates and people still have to be cautious. But I think as we get to, let's hope is the tail end of all this, that I think people are just happy to be back to resuming a normal lifestyle. You got people still waiting at line on the Hop and all these other terrible bars over across the street. You got people, nature is slowly healing, I think is what it is. So I think people are just, even in a preseason game where half the lineup's missing, I think people are just happy to be back in the building and cheering on the Bruins once again in person.
Yeah, it's funny. I was driving into Boston last week, and there was a stop on the Pike going in, like as you're heading towards Brighton, and just nobody was moving for forever. Like no one was moving. And then we start to slowly move. And then we just go. And there was no reason for the stoppage of traffic. But in my head, obviously I was pissed off. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? Nature's healing a little bit. This isn't too terrible. And it'll be fun seeing the Red Sox and the Yankees tonight, Tuesday, for when you guys listen to this.
I will be there.
Will you actually?
Week. Yes, it's a very busy week for yours truly. So I will be there in person covering.
You're covering. Yes. Okay.
I will not
I thought you were just going.
No. No.
I was like, those are expensive tickets. Yeah, I will not be covering that game. I don't think I'll be at it. But everyone should go follow your work over there. You wrote a great column after the Brady game on Sunday night, and I will imagine you will write something fantastic on Tuesday night. But what can the people look forward to Bruins related? Do you cover the Bruins anymore? What the hell?
I do. People can relax. I will still be covering the Bruins throughout the season. And
so he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the Bruins. He doesn't care. Bruins are 14.
Over at BSJ, do not worry. We will still have a look at, our final look at the roster breakdown with kind of that 10-day gap. We'll have time. We'll hopefully work on a couple of features we have on the pipeline that we're hoping to drop for the season stats. So all the daily content you expect as the training camp and preseason winds down will all be over at BSJ. So subscribe to BostonSportsJournal.com. Want to follow me on Twitter? Do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. And Connor, hopefully you can get the power back in your apartment and get out of your new office. Get out of your new office, which is your car. But thank you for joining in these tough circumstances. We send I'll start a GoFundMe for you if that's all right.
Thank you. No, I'm gonna get a donut now, so I'll be all set.
There you go. We'll GoFundMe for the donut. But for CLNS Media, I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest.